already have like 3 reactions. People on. Hi, I'm Nancy Sheed of Sheed Communications. I'm so excited. I always get excited when the technology works. So I always like to give gratitude for technology working. But beyond that, I'm hugely excited and grateful to be speaking today with Anne Bogel of Modern Mrs. Darcy. Hello, Anne. So thank you for being here. This is just a true treat, a summertime treat. And I kind of feel like a catch up because we haven't had a chance to chat. So this is a selfish endeavor as well.
That's mutual.
Exactly. So it's just a chat. For those of you who don't know, Anne, she is, I'm using your bio, Anne, a blogger, a bookworm, and a big question asker. She facilitates the ongoing conversation of womanhood in our time. What she also doesn't put in her bio exactly, but I want to make sure everybody knows, she's an amazing podcaster and also an author. So with all of those credentials, I want to turn it over to you, Anne, and say thank you for being here. And we're really excited to have you. And I have a million questions to ask, but I really want to go kind of, as I say, behind the scenes and ask kind of about how you do it all. But first, sort of what's going on in your world today? And besides the hot water heater, I mean, the sump pump base that we just talked about, and the sword too.
Well, I went to work out at 6 a.m. and then I went straight to Krispy Kreme afterwards because it's my daughter's birthday. So we have a birthday donuts tradition.
Nice.
Yeah, getting some work done, and I'm dealing with a flooded basement.
Not yours.
Somewhere in here, not mine. I did a little bit of recording for the podcast, but just the like. And this is What Should I Read Next? Episode 139, not the part where I actually talk to somebody. And I hope to write a blog post eventually. But now I get to talk to you, which is always such a treat.
So a quick history. Anne and I were just talking about this, and we were the backstory on Anne is I was working with Laura Vanderkam, who's still a client of mine. Somehow you and I must have met online in terms of you were a fan of Laura's or you had interviewed Laura. I can't remember exactly how you and Laura, I mean, by topic and nature of conversation, that's how your worlds, I'm sure.
I think this was back in the days when the internet was this cozy place and you commented on people's blogs and they commented on yours and you got to kind of know them. So I don't remember I think she might have emailed me first and said, my friend Nancy is coming to Louisville. And since I can't be there, I need you to have coffee with her instead.
Now, I'll even be more aggressive to say, I think I reached out to you and said, my sister, who's a bookstore owner, is going to be, or who's thinking about doing a bookstore. Like, I think I had to get Holland involved because I was like, we're going to have this crazy blind date. But yeah, I think that was it. It was like, we were going to be in Kentucky and we were like, Anne's going to be in Kentucky. So should we meet? So we had a blind date in the Starbucks and talked about books. And it was so
never been happier to be in a Starbucks.
Oh,
that was fun. I can't believe that was 5 years ago.
It was 5 years ago tomorrow. So we should send Holland an anniversary card tomorrow.
We totally should. Because it feels like it's been forever, but also didn't that just happen? Like, that just happened.
Yeah, 5 years ago. But then exactly. But I was like 5 years. Yeah. But we've we've met in between there. So again, just a little backstory for people who might not know the whole Modern Mrs. Darcy story. And the reason I'm curious to talk to you today is I want to say that you were the quintessential tribe builder, Anne, in my opinion. I mean, in terms of a loyal following, you have nearly 50,000 followers on Facebook alone. We'll talk more about your kind of stats and let you tell more about how you're building your tribe. But just to give you a taste of the following that Anne has, I was actually in the Novel Neighbor bookstore, Holland's bookstore in St. Louis, literally in May. And we happened to, she wasn't even working. We just happened to be standing there, walking there. And 2 women were at the cash register and they were like, oh yeah. We were asking, how did you get here? Why did you come here? And or the woman behind the counter was asking that. And they said, oh, we decided to have a girls' weekend and we picked to come to St. Louis. And your bookstore was the whole reason we came. And we were like, really? Tell us more about it. They're like, well, we heard about it on Modern Mrs. Darcy. And they were like, so we just made a girls' weekend out of it. You're like, oh my God, that is amazing. So the power of Modern Mrs. Darcy. You were spawning girls' weekends to bookstores. So I mean, that's a small anecdote, but it just was amazing, the power of people and your fans and your following. So if you don't know that's going on, people are walking in bookstores because of you.
I'm going to rewrite my bio next.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Spawning girls' weekends in bookstores.
Yeah. You can put that on your credentials. So
will do.
Anyway, I'm desperate to talk about like a million things. I'm going to try and keep this focused because I think I personally want to know a little bit more about how you came to be Modern Mrs. Darcy and kind of build your tribe and build this community. And I also want to give you credit for back in the day when we met. I've always considered you an early adopter in all things digital. Like you had the blog thing down. You figured out the podcast thing before everybody was like, you should have a podcast. And, I knew you were into email marketing. And I truly feel like just having watched you over these 5 years, you didn't wait for somebody to tell you how to do social media or what you should do on social media. You figured out on each platform the best way to make them work. So it's been really fun to watch. And I think, do you have a techie background, or has it just been your nature to sort of try things and, break things first and then see what happens?
That's funny because I do not feel like an early adapter in any of it. For years, I felt like I started my blog super late. I mean, I don't think there is such a thing as late for creating good stuff, but I felt super late. I didn't do Facebook and Twitter for almost a year when I started it. Didn't get on Instagram for forever, but I do love to, I don't have any problem with trying things and seeing how it goes. And yeah, breaking things is okay with me. It's not always okay with my husband, but I mean, who I live with, who sometimes I call in to fix my messes, but I'm fine with it.
And we'll explain that's because he does tech. Those tech messes, right? I was like, we need to elaborate. He fixes tech messes, right?
Yes, and I mean that lovingly.
Right,
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So, and one of the questions I like to ask is sort of what has been a game changer for you in terms of growing your audience? And that could be sort of right now, or if you look at, let's say, from the point you started your blog and started growing your tribe, where did you see points of either pivot or shifts or big sort of leaps in terms of what you were doing? And that could be either technologically or content or whatever you saw as being big shifts.
I can think of 3. Let's see if I can remember what they are when I'm done. The first is when I started blogging, it was kind of anonymous. I was really uncomfortable about being on the internet as a human. And so it really made a difference when I made it personal, because it wasn't until that point. And this was fairly early. This was probably 4 months in. I was like, okay, I get how this works. I was kind of scared of the internet and the blogosphere, but this is actually kind of nice out here. And when it wasn't as scary, I felt like I could be a little more open. And I've never been like, here are all my guts on the internet for the whole world to see. And here's all my dirty laundry. I've never been like that. Right. But before that, it was anonymous and just, this is me. This is what I think. This is how, and just make it personal. Big shifts happened early when other people with influence in their audiences said, hey, I found this blog and it's great. You should read it if you like this, this, and that. So that was huge. Almost overnight, it was oh, people are reading this. And that was amazing. Yeah. And so I'm just very mindful of how when you, whoever you are, tell your friends over coffee or while you're walking the dog or on your Instagram account, I like this thing and you should check it out if this sounds like it's for you. That makes a big difference in just people finding good stuff. And then the third thing is more big, and that's starting the podcast. I just really didn't anticipate. I'd heard how podcasting is personal and it's intimate because you can hear someone talking to you in real time, and people who listen to podcasts spend a lot of time with the host. But just to really go to events or hear from people by email or message in whatever format, I was really surprised at how much easier it was to make a connection and for people reading or listening to feel this is part of my day that matters to me. And I read that it was true, but wow, it was really,
it came from
experience. Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just sort of it wasn't the same experience as putting a blog post up and getting comments. It was kind of more intimate and more.
Yeah. And that was in early 2016 that we started that.
Well, I was about to say, you also have a really good podcast voice, Anne. Come on. Yeah. you do good voice for podcasts too. That doesn't hurt at all. But I was hoping you would mention the podcast because that seems to me from the time I knew you before to the big jump in terms of doing the podcast. And now maybe I'm jumping ahead, but maybe ask do you have a sense of your followers or downloads, or do you track numbers with related to your podcast, or is it a matter more of feedback that you get in terms of how you're seeing how it's doing or rating it?
Well, those numbers are tracked, but I don't usually look at them.
Oh, good.
Because like sometimes I do really like to dig in and see like, and I really did at first, like, does this make a difference? What are people listening to? What speaks to people? But too much of that makes me crazy. And so I don't typically do it. And also right now, this might be a little nerdy. So if you don't care about the details, I totally understand that. But the way podcasting analytics are measured has changed dramatically in the past year. So I've just found it frustrating to not be able to compare apples to apples, but to have like standards have changed for what counts as a download and how, So if I look at like our stats compared to this time last year or October or January, I'm not comparing them to the same thing. It's like looking at the price of bread, not adjusted for inflation. It doesn't mean anything to see what it costs over the years.
That is nerdy, but very helpful information. I mean, I slightly feel that way almost about a lot of analytics in this digital world in general, but that's very interesting to know. And I don't think we have to give the shout out, and we'll put the link in, but the name of your podcast is
What Should I Read Next?
And it's about
book talk, reading recommendations, and literary matchmaking.
Yay!
It's all things book nerdiness.
Oh, and that voice, it makes it so great. All right. So the other piece, if you don't mind me as an observer throwing in, that I see you just do incredibly well, and I think it's not a secret, but it's something that I think a lot of people are into, is I feel like you are the queen, and you have this ability to, again, I'm going to go slightly nerdy, leverage your content, right? Like you have figured out how you take one beautiful piece of whatever it is, whether it's your amazing reading guide or whether it's, another feature, or even if it's just a blog post, but you just do this awesome way of slicing and dicing it and making it so accessible across platforms, in promotion, in terms of speaking to people, making sure that it looks like to me you wring every single ounce of it out that you can to make it work for you and get people back to it. And I say that with just profound respect. So, because it's something I say to clients, that stop thinking about quantity and worry about the quality, and doing the most with the quality, right? With the stuff that really works. And you do that beautifully. I don't know, I would assume that's intentional, but I just want to,
I'm glad it looks that way.
It does. It really does. And I think you're, to me, a kind of amazing case study for somebody who knows how to make it work across platforms, break it out, tease it out, promote it, and everything else. I mean, I think the reading guide sticks in my mind, but I see you do it with every single blog post and every single, podcast episode.
Well, I appreciate that, because I'm doing it wrong. I mean, if I was doing it right, I would spend more time promoting and less time creating. And I don't want to.
Really?
So, yeah.
Well, having said that,
so I'm glad. So it means a lot to me that it doesn't look like I'm just a slacker in that department. So thank you, Nancy.
No, not at all. I think, okay, so you're right. So what we hear is that you should be spending, 80% of your time promoting the 20% of your content. That's awesome. And I think, oh my gosh, I know.
I would die.
I know, but I think, but you still make it feel like you put lots of energy into promoting, again, all the stuff that you are doing. So thank you for doing both well, because it looks awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a question I can't wait to ask. And this might be like asking your favorite child, but what are your favorite social media? Do you have a favorite social media network, or why do you love the ones that you love? If you couldn't say, you had to pick a favorite. Listening.
I might have used to have a hard time picking favorites, because I used to really love Twitter. That Twitter stresses me out. So it's probably Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah. No, not probably. It's Instagram. It's pretty. And I like catching up with my actual friends, and the book community on Instagram is pretty great. So I enjoy that aspect too.
And don't you feel like it's just easier? Like I mean, it's starting to get a little more complicated, but don't you feel like it's also just easier? Like you can get in, whether it's through stories or your feed, and you don't have to think about 18 different elements on Instagram like you do with Facebook, or as you said, the Twitter, whatever. So that's your first go-to platform in terms of personal and professional, or to you they're the same thing?
It does get really blurry, but yes, because I don't use Facebook personally. I have to have an account for my business stuff, but I don't use it. So if I didn't nickel for every time someone has said, but I put it on Facebook, I thought you would see. So now my good friends know if it's on Facebook. I did not see it. Please text me. And I use Twitter for both, but especially depending on what's happening in the world that people are talking about, I'm like, okay. We're just not going to do this today.
Time to go off. Exactly. Okay. And then as visual, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, as visually creative as you are, that Instagram is. What are is Pinterest on your radar screen? Is Pinterest mostly for work, or do you sometimes go down the Pinterest rabbit hole and then come back? And I'm curious because you're so visually creative. That's why I was wondering how, and the book audience seems to be on Pinterest.
Oh, thank you. I do use Pinterest, but I have to be very careful. So we use it to promote stuff, and I use it for my own work. Like I just spent an hour on Pinterest with my daughter on Saturday because she's painting her room and we wanted to look at different colors. So we use that search for like project-based stuff regularly. But if I'm just scrolling, I don't know what they've done to the algorithm, but I feel like they show me the weirdest stuff. I just don't care. I do not need to know how to organize I do not need 174 ways like to organize my spice cabinet. Sounds like way too interesting considering what I feel like they actually show me. So
yeah, but I've seen pictures of your bookshelves. So I have a feeling that your spice cabinet probably is beautifully laid out.
It's not, but for a while, all Pinterest showed me were other people's bookshelves and reading recommendations. And I was like, I know a lot of people don't like the new algorithm, but I'm here for this. And then it just all went to junk.
Okay. Fascinating. Okay. I'm loving your perspective on this because it's not completely different, but
yeah,
it's different from other users' experience. So, and what are you doing differently sort of right now in this moment, or you're thinking about trying, or, like kind of in real time? What are you doing differently, to again, build this tribe, or feel like you reach this tribe, or connect with this tribe, or, kind of what's on your radar screen for, I wouldn't say it's for what's hot, but what you feel aligns with your message and your tribe building that is new?
I'm making myself try on social media, or I'm making myself do it because I have some big long-term projects coming up and that I'm working on now. And so my instinct is to go in my cave and just work on them. Right. I have this underlying belief that I think is kind of sweet, kind of naive, and kind of sweet and kind of naive, that good work will out. So I should be spending more time making the good work. Like the cream will rise to the top. Like people will find the good stuff. But I don't think that's always true, just based on how many times I'll read an author and think like, why isn't everyone not talking about this book? And it's just because they don't know. So somebody has to be talking about it. And if it's your Instagram account, that somebody should be you. So I'm really making myself take time to post, and especially to do stories. When I wake up in the morning, I never think, oh, I want to do an Instagram story. But then when I'm on like frame one, I'm like, oh, this is fun. Why wasn't this on my calendar? And the reason probably is I have a deadline. But that is a shift for me to work more on showing up there.
And that's good to hear. And two things. One, I think that's an ever going balance, because I think what you and I, in fair enough, can say we've seen with social media is a lot of people who didn't necessarily have quality work or substantive work or art or whatever they were bringing to the world were masters of these networks, right? So they were masters at growing audiences because they'd figured out how to work the platforms, but there wasn't necessarily work underneath, right? And
I clicked on one of those 45 minutes ago, yeah.
And on the other side, as you said, there are these people, and I find those are the people I'm drawn to, who are like, oh my God, your stuff is so great. We have to figure out ways to get it out to the world. And sometimes it's even the nature of the person who's behind it, who's like, I'm going to let my work speak for itself, or, oh, I can't do social, or, oh, I can't even imagine sending an email. So it's striking that right balance. But I that goes back to the olden days of magazines, right? Like you look and you get your current magazines where real journalism is happening and there's no advertising to support it. I mean, so it's a different take, I think, present tense of like, you still have to keep the word out there and make it lucrative. But I quickly also want to comment, you made a comment about calendars, and we were discussing before we went on behind you. I said, oh, Erin, what's that behind you? And so will you share sort of that those are what we see on the wall behind you? You don't have to go through it, but
that's the next 8 months of my life. So actually it's not, it's the past 2 in the coming 6. I thought for a long time I wasn't a digital person because I didn't like paint, and I don't color code things. Well, I do sometimes now, but I didn't really understand that words are visual, and my brain cannot think if I can't see it. So when I am planning long-term content or deadlines, or what do I want to do with my life? How do I make sure things are easily spaced or evenly spaced that I'm bringing to people like in the book club or on the blog? I do not plan social media like that. I like to see it all in one place. I don't like to flip. I don't like to scroll. I just want to see it at a glance. And they don't actually sell wall size calendars, so you have to make your own. That's a page. That's like a desk size calendar, just pulled out and washi taped to the wall.
Is that do I hear a product launch coming, Anne? Do I hear a potential product idea?
No, somebody already made Post-its, and you can buy the wall calendars at Office Depot. So no need. Maybe I could copyright my taping system.
But when you say your life, to me, okay, that's maybe your appointments and schedules and everything else. But more importantly, which I think a lot of people don't appreciate, is you said the magic word content, right? So on there is, what am I writing about? What am I going to promote this week? What am I talking about? Or if you're counting down to a launch, that stuff is on your calendar as well. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand who aren't in this industry or who are new to this, that it doesn't just happen. As you said, you don't wake up and say, what am I going to post today? There's an element of spontaneity, and that's where I think, as you pointed out, stories are great, but people don't wake up and be like, today's blog post should be about X. You might have a spin on X, but
yeah, only every once in a while. Because I do that sometimes. I'll be like, you know what? Like this happened to me last night in the checkout line, or this happened to me this morning when I was walking the dog. But I don't feel like my brain can like let go and have the freedom to like go down those trails if I don't have a framework already in place. Because if I had to wake up in the morning and go like, what am I going to write about today? I would find that stressful. But knowing that I have something ready, but I could just push it to next week if I wanted to, because I want to write about this thing that's top of mind. I'm okay doing that. But usually that's not how it works. So I was thinking the example, your recent post about the interaction with the singer, right? Like that was a great one. Like we were listening to this guy sing. I mean, that was a lovely post you did. And that obviously wasn't planned, right? It was a reaction. Right. And I woke up that morning and thought, I've been meaning to write this. Do I have time to write this morning? And just wrote it start to finish and put it up.
Awesome. That's awesome. And I think going back to sort of the general is, if you lay this foundation or have that content calendar that you're talking about, then, your piece that you just did that you wrote in the moment, I call that the icing, right? Like that's the bonus. That's fantastic. But you still have a plan, and that's not, you're not sidetracked on your plan. And what do you think is your, stellar secret in terms of growing this tribe or connecting with people? Like, what is it about Anne or Modern Mrs. Darcy that you think gets people coming back all the time? And that's a personal question, but I love hearing sort of people's take on basically what their point of differentiation is, for lack of a better word.
Well, I don't know how true this still is in 2018, but in 2011, when I started Modern Mrs. Darcy, like it was an oddball blog. It still is. I mean, it's not a niche site. Like it doesn't fit clearly in some category. Right. But they say like if the thing that you want to read doesn't exist, you have to be the one to write it. They is actually like Toni Morrison. So credit where credit is due. But I don't know. It's specific. It's personal. And I think what works for our audience is that we are super nerdy about books and reading. So I'm not always talking about books and reading, but so many of the posts are just inspiration, or like inspiration is drawn from something I've read or something I've discussed with someone, or like this morning I put up a book list post. And what we've heard from readers over and over again is that nobody is passionate about that subject in their everyday life, so that they are seeking that community on the internet. So I think really there's some really bad movie quote here, but just like really flying the nerd flag high has worked for our audience. Not like I really set out to be like, well, what hack can I use to get people to read this? Like it didn't start like that, but just in deciding to indulge that thing that was like, you're not supposed to do this if it doesn't have a niche, because that won't work and nobody will read it. That hasn't been true for us. And I think that's why, like something that my husband pointed out to me right out of the gate was, after obsessing about this, like, well, I don't really have a niche. Like, is that terrible? This isn't really about something easy to categorize. There's no checkbox for this. He's like, you don't have a niche, but you have a very tightly defined demographic. So, and it's
true. I mean, and that is your, I mean, I would argue that's still the need. I mean, I'm in his camp. I think that would work. And I think on the other side, I would say, but the authenticity that comes through and the passion and the nerdiness, right? And I think the other piece is that you, even as you might have been trying to throw spaghetti at the walls and maybe testing, like, okay, I'm going to talk to you about maybe what I'm wearing today. You still did it with the same, I mean, it never felt like it strays from your mission, right? Like, and just in reading your bio was the same experience. It's like, I, yes, love and passionate about nerdiness and blogs, but I'm also going to give you kind of behind the scenes of what my lovely, wonderful, nerdy life looks like. And sometimes it's not wonderful and fantastic, but I'll let you in on that as well.
And if I find a really great mascara, I promise to tell you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because the same women care about like which classics they really should have, are worth making time for on their reading list, even if they usually read like page turning thrillers. The same people also want to know, like, what's that tea you said you loved? Please tell me about it. Or, right. You know, like they drink iced coffee and they wear mascara. And if they don't, that's fine too. And that would probably be an interesting conversation. But these are all the same people. And it's okay if there's not one neat little checkbox where you can say, this content is about X. I mean, the podcast is more tightly defined, and that was on purpose. Yes. But I do like having the freedom in the other spaces.
Exactly. And I mean, I guess as you're speaking, I'm sort of like, you're kind of filling the niche of what, you know, the lulls between book club, you know, between book group meetings and book club meetings. You're totally filling that gap for thousands, if not, I'm going to say hundreds of thousands of people, having met and seen people be so passionate about modern Mrs. Darcy. And I talked about I think we're up to 50,000 people on Facebook. Are there others, you know?
I didn't know that. I don't look.
Well, again, okay. The old
days, job to look.
That's what we practice. Then let me rephrase the question before I ask it. What do you use as your tools of measurement for how you're doing, that you reflect on to sort of say, oh, this is working, this isn't working? That's probably a better question than saying, you know, tell us about your stats, Anne. What do you sort of look at and say, awesome, you know, is it a matter of comments? Is it, you know, I find there's the balance of quality and quantity. So what are your points of, you know, your success measurement points for this is working, let's keep doing it, or this isn't, let's tweak it, or this didn't work, why didn't it work?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Because like it's a cocktail of many different things. So we do pay attention to our numbers, but that's not all. I mean, like, because page views is one factor, and it's an important factor. Like we have ads on the site, we have ads on the podcast. Right. When people download it or when they view the page, like I get paid, and that's a real thing. But sometimes the content that does really well, I find exasperating. Like, really? That's the one that, and Facebook does this too. Like they'll grab a post and they will show it out of the blue to 200,000 people. I mean, I wish they do it more often, but it's like, really, that one? Why? Right. I would hack this, but I have no idea what is going on here. Interesting.
So in terms of like, not using clickbait, as we like to say, but just, it may have been something that was going on that it got picked up and promoted. Mm-hmm. And then I think the other question I always like to ask, yours is an obvious one, so we might have to say instead of two things. So what do you do when you get off of the social media and you're not on your computer, dealing with comments and writing your blog posts and everything else? And I know you're going to say reading, but sort of what are the other things that, Anne does to recharge her batteries besides being all over, digitally everywhere and engaging with your audience as well as reading? What are the sort of other fun things we don't know Anne does?
Oh, everybody knows Anne does this because I've said it like 5 times already. I like to walk the dog. And if I do really need to I do it without any headphones in. Or I also like to walk with friends or by myself or with my husband. Yeah, I really like to eat. So love to go out and grab a bite or a drink. And we're hikers and paddle boarders. That's our new family thing. And sometimes I like to move the books around in my office, or sometimes, do I want to show you? I don't know you'd be able to see it. I have so many books on my office table right now. So sometimes I'm like, okay, it's time to channel my inner Zen and go alphabetize these where they belong.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see me cringing? I'm like,
no, this is I have to be really overwhelmed and stressed out for that to sound like an appealing option because I'm not naturally organized. So I think my brain is let's do something really, really special and unusual for self-care.
Special
alphabetical order. Yeah.
I'm going
Cleaning up is unusual.
I'm going to color code my library of books and everything else. And then do you post a picture of it after that to sort of do we get to see the Zen effect afterwards and on Instagram?
I mean, it depends on where I am in you should really spend time on this Anne cycle, probably, but not during. If I'm doing it because I need a break, I won't do anything during that involves my phone. Except hit play on a podcast or an audiobook. And maybe not even that.
Well, I am very, 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 well, wait, before I go into that, Anne, is there anything else you'd like to share with us? Maybe some interesting things that you have coming out this fall that we could talk about before we.
I do have some. I'm what are you hinting at, Nancy? Thank you for the teaser thing. I have a book coming out this fall. Here, I actually have it on the floor.
Okay. It's not alphabetized.
Ta-da. I have a book coming out this fall.
Yay!
And it's about reading.
The book lady who loves to read is written about a book about reading.
Backwards. Oh, it is. It's
backwards.
Shiny. It won't really be shiny.
That's okay.
When it comes out, but this is just a little arc. But they didn't print me arcs last time, so this is pretty exciting. That's my library that they watercolored. I mean, they is
not Toni Morrison.
No. Hugely talented British guy.
Nice. Okay, and just hold it up again. The name of the book is?
It's I'd Rather Be Reading: The Delights and Dilemmas of the Reading Life.
Nice. And is there anything hardcover? If we're interested in learning about it before it comes out, are there any sort of pre-ordery things we should do, sign up for, or what should we do to learn more, Anne?
It's this is your job, Nancy. Where do we have it? I'm actually, we're putting up the lunch team thing on Monday.
Perfect.
And it's going to go really, really quick. They said they'd leave it open. I think we're leaving it open for 4 days because of the 4th of July. But we have a launch team that my publisher is putting together. And my publisher will choose the people I don't get to. Of 300. That's happening next week. But so it will be on the blog more and more as it gets closer. But right now you can go to annbogel.com. Anne with an E, B as in books. And actually that's spelled different ways. BOGEL.com. And my books are on the site. My first book, Reading People, and also this one. Nice. And you can pre-order it now anytime wherever books are sold. And we have pre-order bonuses that are fun. Now we have to do it for 2 copies or more because otherwise I'll go bankrupt and not be able to do anything else with my life. But we're mailing out physical stuff this time in addition to digital downloads. So we're sending out stickers because we have great stickers from the podcast and the site for reading. One says, how good it is to be among people who are reading, which is our podcast thing. And we're sending out really pretty 4x6 postcards that are matte and gorgeous of the cover that looks very glary right now. Well, it's similar to the cover. It's that same illustration. And we're sending out signed book plates that you can put in the front of the book.
Nice. Fantastic. Yeah, and I just want to call it, so annbogel.com is different than modernmrsdarcy.com.
That's just my homepage that has all events. It has links to all the stuff on it. But there's also a site that's live now, but doesn't have all the pre-order information on it yet. But it is I'd Rather Be Reading.com.
Okay. So all of those will get us to the right place if
They
we
all
want.
will. I'm not supposed to give you too many options. And yet, take your pick.
I, I
See,
just
not doing it right, Nancy.
and I just want to make sure that we get
I like
the.
choices.
Me too. That's why it was hard for me. I was like, oh, just go with one message. Go with one message. Forget it. Well, and I can't thank you enough. I am so happy that 5 years ago we had a blind date in Starbucks. It has been really, 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 really fun to watch you, grow so far. And I know this is just part of your journey. So I'm very excited about your book. Thank you for your time. I'll include lots of links in the Facebook page, and then we'll put this up to the blog with more details. So if people have questions and want to weigh in, and we'll follow this, and I'm sure also pipe in. But thank you, Anne. Have a great, great day.
It was my pleasure. It was so good to talk to you again.
You too. We'll do this
Even
again.
if it wasn't over coffee, because that would be best.
It would be best. And in person would be best. But
it'll happen again.
Exactly. Yeah. Take care, and thank you for
all right, you too. Thank you, Nancy. Bye.